All right, Peter, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Porter. It's great to chat with you.
Yeah, so I am just so awestricken by your beautiful visuals that you've been sharing on Facebook, which is why I reached out to you. Um,
Thank
so
you.
how long have you been painting?
Um, well, actually, they're drawings. They're not paintings. So
Oh,
I'm
thank you for
I'm
the
drawing
correction.
with a pencil and with lots of different pencils and with charcoal and depending on what I'm working on, some color pencil as well. Um, so I've been working on those pre-pandemic really for about a year and a half before the pandemic started. I've been drawing my whole life. So long before that, but and been playing around with the kind of work that I do is kind of a photorealism with some little bit of surrealism thrown in there. And I've always loved it. And I've always loved that genre and that style and kind of dabbled around with it over the years, but never really got into it like I did until a certain point maybe about 4 years ago or so.
Oh, okay. So this was sort of a response, it sounds like, to having a lot of time on your hands because everything was closed.
It became that for sure. It really became that once the pandemic hit, it was kind of my savior. I think for a lot of us, we found, especially, not, I want to say just in the creative community, but a lot of creative people I know found a lot of solace and refuge in their work. And it could be frustrating at times because, excuse me, if you're, you know, trying to find that voice, trying to find that muse, working with it, and there is isolation going on, it can be a challenge at times.
Hmm.
So I have an advantage because the pieces that I work on, once I've found a certain path, they take a long time. So once I've started, I'm immersed literally for months in one piece. And because I do have a full-time job during the day, there's a lot of back and forth. And so it filled up a lot of space in a very, very positive way for me. So, but no, but actually the work started before the pandemic and sort of sifted into the pandemic in a healthy way for me, actually.
Hmm. That's so amazing because so I've never seen your creations in person, but I just assumed from looking at the pictures that they were the photos that they were paintings. So that's really that has have you gotten that before? Is that a strange assumption?
Um, they have been called paintings before for sure. Most of the time, the thing that people say is, "Oh, it's not a photograph."
Right. Yes,
And
that too.
if you're doing kind of photorealism stuff, my work by no means is as sort of hyper realistic as some people. And there are artists out there who are far half my age who are doing amazing things and have patience that, I mean, I think my work does take a lot of patience, but they have patience that I can't touch. It's amazing the kind of things that people are doing on a large scale. And my work is large scale. It's generally 5 to 6 feet tall. And so I'm working life size ish, or depending on what the subject matter is, larger than life size if it's a larger portrait. And so it's um, I think it's really a meditation. It's a practice. It's an allowing. It's a letting go. There's a craft to it that I think with every piece I learn more and I get a little bit stronger in certain kinds of technical aspects of it, but also conveying kind of what I want to say.
Hmm. Oh, interesting. It's really like I have to see one in person now because understanding that it's pencil now, I'm like, this is really, it's
You
really tripping
do.
me out.
I want you to see them in person. And I had my first show ever last fall at a brand new gallery here where I live in Petaluma in Northern California.
California. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's a really wonderful gallery, and I felt really lucky to be there and had an amazing experience, and really found that having a show was so much more than showing your art. It really felt like there was a lot of community involved, and there was a lot of connections involved. People that I hadn't seen in so long came to the show, and also the people that you meet, like you probably know this through your music, through your own art, that there's conversations and new people that you meet that you never would have otherwise. So it's this
Hmm.
amazing kind of connective tissue, a conduit to people that you would normally just walk right by, and there they are, and wanting to connect because of what you created. And then there becomes this third thing of the art and you and them, and then that new relationship that comes from all of that, which to me was probably the most amazing part about it. And the bonus, I hadn't really thought about it that way because I'd never shown my work that way before.
Yeah, that's a really, I suppose that exists in the music world to an extent. Well, I guess it does totally. I mean, like, because you could be just a recording artist, right? You could just go to a studio, record your stuff, and never know how anybody takes it in, never have sort of any input about how people are absorbing it.
Right.
But yeah, so I guess that's a not a uniquely, you know, art or visual art sort of experience. But I would also imagine that because the visual art is so solitary, time consuming, like in a different way than I think recording music. I mean, I show up for a few hours to record a vocal. It's not, I guess
Right.
maybe producers feel differently. Maybe they feel more like visual artists.
Right.
But yeah, so that must be kind of an interesting, like, uh, sensation to, be now exhibiting what you've created and to have like this whole new experience with your
Totally.
art, right?
Yeah, 100%. And you kind of hit it right on, because the kind of work I do is very isolating, and I'm also I do other kinds of creative things too. I'm a children's book author and illustrator, and all of that is very. And then I have a day job that's also, especially since the pandemic, also just sitting in a room by myself being creative. And I'm really, really super lucky that I get to do all that. I feel like I landed in a place where I get to access all these different parts of my brain. Well, I shouldn't say that. I actually think it all comes from one central located creativity zone in your brain, and everything kind of shoots out from there, but in a really unique way that I get to kind of like, dive into the kids book part and be a kid again, and dive into the art, which, especially for this show, the theme of the show was youth with earth. And so the images, 4 of the 5 images, revolved around young people interacting with the earth in a photorealistic but also slightly surreal way. And as a kind of a comment on just what the next generation is inheriting. So I'm working in that, and then I'm working in the kids book world. And then also my day job is I work in greeting cards. I have done that for a long time, my entire
Oh my
career
gosh,
actually.
how interesting. Wow.
So yeah, it's still fun after all this time. I've been doing it a long time, and I enjoy it, and the people are fun and creative, and you're working in a team environment there. But since COVID, it's been this sort of quiet world that I'm in, other than work meetings and all that. And so to go out and share work with people was man, it was just like, it was like finding new breath. It was really, and I almost mean that literally, kind of breathed new life into my energy around my work, not just the art, but all of the creative stuff. And I started interacting with more creative people, and made me feel like we've all got to get together more. We've all got to like find ways. And it was happening on some level through Zoom with some creative people. But to physically get together, you realize kind of how much you really need that and miss that. And especially for me, who had never shown before. So that was brand new as well.
Yeah. Well, and interesting because your graphics have to do with like this visceral connection to where you live, the earth, right?
Yeah.
And to like not have any connection with humans is very different from that visual and that feeling that you get from your paintings.
Yeah.
Sorry, from your drawings.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. It happens all the time. And to sort of like play out the art, it was surreal in itself to kind of like be kind of alone and work with the theme of the entire planet, what's going on in the planet. But because of the nature of the work, lots of time to think and reflect on that. So you need to find good music, good podcasts, things to also keep you company while you're doing that work.
When you're drawing, do you consider it like, is it like you have a vision in your mind that you're trying to replicate on a page, or are you discovering it as you draw?
That's a great question. And I've wondered this about other artists. I don't think there's any photorealistic or hyper-realistic artist that's just working from their imagination.
Hmm.
And if they are, I bow down to them, because it is, I mean, to know kind of the exact location and form of light and shadow, and to know facial and bone structure well enough to really create that in a super realistic way without reference. I certainly can't do that. So I work from photos, and
Oh,
I
okay.
had really had a strong idea that I wanted to. I've always had a lot of ideas in my mind of images that I'd love to create. And so initially, before I started out, I contacted a photographer friend of mine, and we were going to work together and set up shots that I wanted to do. And for a couple of reasons, that didn't quite work out. So I thought, well, there's YouTube. So I jumped on YouTube and I found out how to do this thing called low key lighting, which is sort of a fancy term for high contrast, black and white, strong shadows, not necessarily black and white, but strong light source. And learning how to work with lighting and learning how to work with camera settings and those kinds of things are something that I just had a little bit of I think a little bit of anxiety around that. Like, I'm going to have a model over here, and am I really going to know what I'm doing? But I did my homework, and it worked out great. And so when I say it worked out great, it means that I took enough photos that I could actually go into Photoshop and work together with a lot of the photos that I had and take the best parts of the ones, because a lot of them didn't turn out great, but the best parts of the ones that did work out. And when my lighting worked and I figured all that out, and in each photo shoot, I've kind of gotten a little bit more used to working with the lighting and the camera and all that. So what I do is I take my shots, and then I do work in Photoshop and sort of cobble together the image. I do all my sketches first. I talk to the models. And then we have an hour or two photo session. And just as a little aside, one of the best parts of the whole thing is that after we have our photo session, I always let the model know, and everyone has said yes to this so far. It's like, let's do your own, whatever you want to do afterwards. You want to do the same kind of thing, you want to change, you want to do your own thing. It just has to be in the studio, because that's where we are. I mean, it could go outside, I guess, but we've done it all in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, one of the pieces I did of my first big earth piece was with a wonderful girl from around the corner, and her mom was there with her. And then afterwards, we did an amazing mom and daughter photo shoot. And another one was with a model who I worked on two pieces with. And then her mom came, but she was in her early 20s at the time. And her mom was with her, who was a friend of mine. And she's from, the mom is a refugee from Africa. And when it was time for their shoot, they went away and came back in their traditional African outfits, garb. And they're not costumes, they're traditional African clothing. And I was blown away, because I wasn't expecting that at all. And we had the most amazing photo shoot afterwards. So that, to me, is another level of kind of like connecting in ways that I wasn't expecting to connect, using creativity and relationships in a way that is much more than just the art. And all of those relationships on different levels have sort of maintained themselves. And then when I had the opening, most of the models were able to come. Super, super fun. Yeah, super connective. So then I have the final reference that I create. And I might work with the lighting a little bit more in Photoshop. And then I'll use that as a reference and play off of that. And I try not to just do exactly what's there, but get a feel for it. But I do need the reference in order to do the final work, for sure.
Okay, so if I have this right, so you have some initial concept, I'm guessing,
Yes.
and then you hire someone to come in to model. You take the photos, and then the photos that you get from that, you do something with them in Photoshop to alter them in some way. Is it just the lighting that you alter?
No. For instance, I've done it with all my photos, actually. So there's one of let's say I did one of my younger son, and he's in this one, he's kind of an angel. He's got wings, and he's in front of him is planet Earth, and it's very sort of contemplative. But there were different shots with him jumping up in the air, so I could use his legs and his feet coming down. So it's not that he's static. He's actually, and my backdrops are like he's in space. So he's got a complete black backdrop. Some of the black backdrops have stars in them. So he's in space. And so I'll take the legs of one shot, and then the upper body of one, maybe his hands of one, another one that just got the right lighting. All the lighting source is the same, so I can use different pieces from different photos. And so then I might use the head from another shot. And then I'll Photoshop all that together. It doesn't need to be perfect in Photoshop because I'm going to draw it later. I can mend all that stuff when I draw.
Sure.
And as a little aside, I love sharing this because so many things I've learned because there's artists online who are extremely transparent about their processes. And at first I thought, well, they're giving away all their secrets. And it's not like what I'm sharing is a secret, but I love the idea of that community can be created anywhere that way. And it's very generous of those artists to do that, because I learned a ton from people, mostly on YouTube, and the artists that I admire sharing their processes. So yeah, then I get the final thing, and then I work from that. But it's usually anywhere from 2 or 3 to 10 or 12 different photos combined.
Oh, okay. Interesting. And then you print it out and you're looking in that when you're drawing.
I usually use an iPad,
Oh, okay. Yes.
so it can be there next to me, and I might do several images, several shots of the same image, but up the lighting a lot on one and down, really make one darker so I can see how it would look with darker shadows and work that way. I don't have it down to a science or anything, but I'm kind of figuring it out more as I go along.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm glad I asked. I had no idea. I'm not really a visual artist, so I just sort of assume like, all right, you just start drawing.
I like to do that too, but this is a whole different kind of art. And I love to draw. I love to cartoon. I love to just do giant, big doodles. And this is the opposite of that. It's really meticulous. So it's good for me to break away from that and do music or do cartooning or other kinds of art, and including writing, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So was the idea of the youth with the earth, was that an event that happened that gave you this idea, or something specific that made you want to do this particular topic?
I would say specific, and I think a little bit more, I don't know what the word is, kind of generalized in a way. Obviously we're all going through the same things together on the planet. We have 2 boys, 17 and 20.
Okay.
And
I have 2 as well. They have the same age gap, but they're in a littler stage of development.
How old are your boys?
6 and 9.
Oh, I remember those years. Yeah, and their relationship changes as it moves along. It's super fascinating. So those are great ages. So yeah, but the weird thing is that when our boys were 6 and 9, it was a little worrisome, scary out there, and it's only just kind of been growing since then. And so I think one of the things that I feel like, honestly, it's taken a long time for me to identify myself as an artist, just in general. But as time has gone on and I've gotten older, I've thought, I have this feeling about potential. And I really have thought a lot about potential and the potential that we all have, and what keeps us from our potential. And this will be an ongoing process for me forever, I know. And to be quiet enough with yourself, to be inquisitive enough with yourself, and to see what it is that you might want to say in the world, no matter what your outlet is. It could be relationships, It could be gardening. I mean, it can be anything at all. But what is it that does that for you? It could be solitary, it could be community oriented. So I had been doing this kind of art since, you know, it was probably in my mid-teens, and to a greater or lesser degree, and trying to figure out how to do this. And I really thought a lot about potential. And one of the things that I really came to was like, you know, potential is a lot of different things. But I really feel mostly that it's related to enough self-care and self-love that you can have the consistency with yourself to allow yourself to reach some kind of stepping point for yourself. And then as you reach that, you keep going with that. So it's about the consistency, and it's about staying with your initial, and I don't know, I'm not having a good way of putting this. It's about, well, let me read you this quote.
I'm getting it, I think.
Okay. Well, this says it better than I can. This is
Okay.
by Victoria Erickson. She wrote a book called Edge of Wonder. And I have this quote up on my bulletin board next to where I work a lot of the time. And it says, "Consistency is an underappreciated form of intentional magic disguised as a mundane doing." And
That's beautiful.
Consistency is an underappreciated form of intentional magic disguised as a mundane doing. So what are we doing in our lives that feels mundane, but there's an end game in mind? And how can we be in the moment with that is meditative, or that is in the moment, just being in the moment with it? So the Earth series came from that. And I've completed 5 of them now, and it's not a lot in the art world to complete 5 pieces, but they generally take me 200 to 300 hours each. So I wanted to figure out a way that I could say something, contribute something, have some sort of an outlet about how I felt about certainly my own children, but my kids' friends, and all kids. And what you're definitely, you know, what they're inheriting. And then the name of my show was Inheritance, actually. And so what they're inheriting, what their kids are going to inherit. And so hopefully to spark some sort of thought, maybe some conversation around that. And certainly at the show that did happen. So that was a nice benefit.
Yeah, they're really beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. They feel very like kind of vision questy, like almost some like you were saying, surreal in a way, like you are experiencing the earth as bigger than it because of the way that you do the proportions. And I mean, and in a way, I feel like humans do have a grotesquely sort of what in magnified impact on, you know, on our environment by our sheer numbers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that too, to me, is my characters, my figures are giant in my drawings, because they are interacting with Earth that's at a scale that's like, maybe it's the scale of a basketball, or some of them, they're not all the same scale. But for me, the reason behind that is because I've had this thought, you know, I think I was a big thinker as an early kid, and I had a big imagination, or at least an active one, of seeing the planet from space, and imagining what would an alien see if they saw planet Earth. And I think as I got a little bit older, this stayed with me, this kind of this imagining, this vision. And it always seemed to me, and it does, I think more so now than ever, that if somebody who could see what's this amazingly beautiful blue ball in space, and then zoom in and zoom in and zoom in and see how somehow the most intelligent life form on the planet has created what we've created, which is immense beauty and filled with love, and obviously the opposite of that. It's very much related to sort of the duality of love and hate, and love and fear. And so I think about that a lot, and I think about the borders that we've constructed physically and as a construct. And that's really, to me, what the art is about, is these young, I don't want to say naive, because they're not naive beings. They are in many ways, more pure and unaffected than they probably will be at some point, in the near future, or as the years go by, especially considering what's going on in the world. And so I'm trying to at least create a thought in my mind, and maybe other people's minds, if they are open to the art, or everyone's going to interpret it in their own way, obviously. What does it mean to look at this planet in the way that I draw it? I try to draw it beautifully. I have some trouble with it because the planet is always in color, and I have a partial color blindness. So I try to work with that in the best way I can, which is to, well, my wife helps me a little bit with, I know that's the wrong color, and she helps me kind of like work that out a little bit. But I also just try to work instinctually, and try to, plus I also look at the pencils because they have the colors on them. So that helps me too, thankfully.
That's quite remarkable. I'm just sorry, it's like a little asterisk, like that you're doing this and also have like, how does that work? What colors look the same?
It's mostly red green. So
Okay.
a lot of times those blend together to me. Some purples and blues and things are hard for me, pinks and, lighter kind of red. So when I'm working, there is a lot of instinct in it. I will come in as a, it can be a challenge. And I gave myself that challenge because when I did go to art school and did have to do color study. And I found that it's weird because sort of the cones and rods in your eyes, I found for myself, they started like if you work out, I started getting a little bit better at being able to pull those colors apart a little bit more and see them better. But I hadn't had a color study class for a long time. So when I went back into this, I thought, okay, I'm going to dive into this. And I always save doing the earth part for last, because it's the hardest part for me to do. And it is always the hardest part. And but I have so much momentum going by that time because the figure is pretty much done. And it's this last puzzle piece that I then sort of am able to power through. And actually at times I can really enjoy that part. There's a part about doing the kind of work that I do, and maybe for all artists and maybe for musicians too, that it's really not all about just, you're in your muse and you're in your beautiful world. There's a lot of times where it's really hard work, and, it's pretty much, did you sleep well the night before? You got a lot of other things going on. Would you rather just be going out for a walk or watching a movie or doing nothing? And so it's kind of like cleaning a really messy room, it's like really hard to start sometimes. But then when you start, you get a thing going and you start feeling like, I'm so glad that I'm sitting here doing this and feeling like I'm kind of doing what I need to do right now.
It's interesting because having done a lot of like electronic music and recording and things like that, I find that happens, and it's probably a psychological thing, like a psychological interaction with the machines, I feel like, because somebody else will come and be like beep beep boop and everything works magically. But
Right.
I sometimes I would spend like an hour just trying to set up the session because like when I was in college, maybe somebody would like have changed the settings on the thing. And I'm like, what's going on? So a 3 hour chunk of time or a 4 hour chunk of time was like just vanished in setup, and then it's like, yeah.
So, but the question is so when you've done that setup and you've spent all that time and energy doing it, do you then do your music right then? Or do you say, all right, it's set up, I need to go relax for a minute, go do something else and come back? Or do you dive in?
I think if I put that much time into it, I want to actually do
Right.
something. Yeah.
Good for you. I mean, you
I,
still got the space and energy to do it. That's great.
I don't know. I think at that point it's like almost like it's like if I didn't, I would feel like it would feel worse, right? Because you've just spent so much time trying trying to get something to function.
Exactly. You're all ready to
Yeah.
go.
But the thing that will happen to me now is more like, okay, it's taking me so long to set up, and then one of my kids comes in and it needs me to make them a snack. So then,
So,
it gets dropped. Yeah.
right. You have these unintentional built-in breaks that you
Yeah.
get to take or have to take one way or another.
Yeah. Different stage of life. It's less, it gets less and less the amount of time that they need me. But,
Yeah.
it also varies in terms of whatever the issue is, which changes. I'm only at 9, so I don't even know
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
comes next. But
I'm sorry to say, issues don't end.
yeah, I know. Yeah, no, that's
I
what I'm
think
saying. It's like they vary, right? It's
they do vary.
not like I have to make sure you don't fall down the stairs anymore. But now it's something else, maybe more emotional.
Absolutely. Yeah, your issues with 6 and 9 are so much different than 3 and 6.
Yeah,
But at some point in the near future, probably, well, it's a few years maybe, but you won't even need to make snacks anymore. They'll just do that
that's
themselves.
true.
So
That's
yeah,
true.
your time does get freed up, and that's actually for my art is why I took such a long break from do, from doing any real intensive kind of art. And I did do some before kids, and lots of things happened before kids that just sort of stopped, either intentionally or just as it happens. These things just sort of fall away. I was very into meditation before kids, and then when our first boy came along, I really made a conscious decision that I want to do more walking meditation. I want to be more present and meditative in that world. And so formal sitting kind of thing ended for many, many years. And then as they got older, it's like, well, I think there's space for that to start again.
Mm.
And there's a different flavor to all of it, flavor to creativity, to meditation, to time that you have for yourself. Once you've moved through those years of them needing you so much, I think you do come out of it. You come out of it changed, and you have other things to say and do, right?
Mm.
So, and that was a kind of an unexpected, nice little thing for me because I didn't know, what would happen after all those years. But I was happy to find that, the desire for creativity and for making things was as strong as ever.
Mm. Did you ever fear that it wouldn't come back?
Well, as you know, they're busy years, right? So I don't know that I thought a lot about it. And I kind of just tried to, at least on some level, infuse some of that with them. So we draw together a lot.
Mm.
We do music together, and then I was still doing the day job, which is creative. And,
Right.
I didn't get into children's books until, they were a little bit older. So I'm just a late starter at a lot of things.
Mm.
And so, you know, it's never too late. It's never too late to say what you want to say and try what you want to try. And in some ways, starting a little bit later in all that, in that world, for instance, my first book came out about 12, 13 years ago. And the first event I ever did, live event, was in front of a couple hundred people at the LA Book Fest. And there was a big crowd there that day, and people were milling in because after me was Jamie Lee Curtis, who had some kids book out at the
Oh,
time.
yeah,
I don't
okay.
remember what it was. And so people were milling in a lot, and the crowd was getting bigger. And I had this big presentation to do. And I think that if that was happening when I was much younger, I just would have freaked out. I don't know that I could have done it. But I'd had enough under my belt in life and kids and meditation, and also just realizing that we're all really feeling the same things and experiencing the same things on many levels, on the level, in the ways that matter the most.
Hmm.
That I was able to feel strong enough about, well, my book, but also myself, that I could get up and do that. And I don't know that would have happened like if I was much younger. So,
Yeah.
there's a little bit of a ripening to that's nice.
Yeah. Interesting. What's your first book called?
My first book is called, they're all pretty silly books, Cars Galore.
Okay.
And I did a book series with an amazing artist named Bob Staake, who we did 4 books in the
Seriously?
series. Yeah, do you know Bob, his
We
work?
love Bob Stack. Yeah, we read the Red Lemon,
Great
um,
book.
the
Donut
donut
Chef.
donut chef. Yeah, my
Yeah.
kids love those books. Yeah.
Bob's a star. He's amazing. So I've been lucky enough to do 5 books with him, and um, you know, you never know what's going to happen. In the recession of 2008, 2009, I got laid off from my job, and so I had really been wanting to get into children's books and been trying and trying and trying. And so, and I had been failing. I had not been getting into books. And so I would drive the kids around. And at that time we had a van and I'd make up silly rhymes when we were driving around about cars. And, the kids would laugh. So, I'm a ham. So I kept making up more rhymes and then we'd do them around the dinner table a little bit. And I ended up thinking, these are kind of fun. So I was writing them down. Right. And, a year later, I got laid off from my job along with everybody else. Our company went away. And so here I am, my wife's got a job, but we're struggling, right? And I'm out of work and there isn't really any creative work around. So um, I thought of this guy because I used to work at Hallmark Cards and I thought he was a freelancer there at the time. And I really loved his work. So I found this file from a year ago and I cleaned it up and I sent it to him. And I said, hey, we have this connection through Hallmark years ago. And he wrote me back in half an hour. And I'll just say 2 months later, we had a book deal. We had a 2-book deal with a really great publisher.
Oh,
And we've since
wow.
done 5 books. And I've gone on to illustrate a couple of my own. And so I'm just kind of like, what is your back door? What is your breaking the rules? How do you find a way in that isn't the way that were told to do it, that the books tell you
Mm.
to do it? And I've found that most of the things that I've done that have felt the most real or maybe been the most successful for me have been because I broke a rule or I cold called somebody that you really shouldn't do that. And maybe 9 times out of 10 it doesn't work, but maybe once it does. So I just one of my philosophies is that you just never know. So
That's so
try.
true.
It's
Yeah,
good to try.
totally. Oh, I can't wait to, my kids are just gonna be so excited when I tell them I spoke to
Yay.
someone who illustrated for Bob Stack. Not to make that your crowning achievement, but it's a cool one.
It's I'm proud of it. I'm very lucky to work with him. And I didn't even know when I cold called him. I mean, I knew that he'd done some kids' books, but at the time he'd done like 40 books. And I didn't realize this, but New Yorker covers. And he was in Newsweek and Mad
Oh.
Magazine. He was just way like more prolific and successful than I had imagined. I probably still would have cold called him, but I I'm even more thrilled to know that he wrote me back and so quickly because he liked what I did, and he had some couple thoughts on it and that were super helpful. Um,
Sorry,
and
so he's not the person who worked with you at Hallmark, though. This is a different person, or it's the same person?
we never worked together, but when I was a writer there, he was a freelance artist, so I would see his
Oh,
work.
okay. I'm sorry, I missed that connection. Okay,
Oh
so
yeah,
the
sorry.
person was Bob Stack. Got it. Okay.
Yes, and so here I am. I'm a little desperate and thinking I have this idea. I think it's kind of strong, and I remember this guy, and you know, this was 2010 probably, and you could find people online back then. And so it was a happy day. It was a good day when he wrote me back.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
That's so cool. Wow. Okay, so I have to go check out those books. That'll be fun. And
cool.
when I figure out what they are, I will hopefully link them in the podcast notes
Yay,
with your other info that you gave me.
wonderful.
Um, yeah. So, do you feel like talking a little bit about your greeting card job? That's interesting to me.
Sure. Yeah, no
What
problem. I mean, I've done it for a long time, so yeah.
what does that look like? Like, are you like just like how does that work? In other words, like somebody brings you something, you do this. Well, I don't know.
Pretty much yes.
Okay.
Um, well, I've worked at 3 companies over the years. I worked for Hallmark, and then I worked for a pretty mid-sized company, and now I work for Papyrus greeting cards.
Oh,
And so for all of those companies, I've been primarily a writer. I do some art directing, and for Hallmark, I did some illustrating. But when I was in college, I had a cartoon strip in the college paper at San Jose State. And best part of all of my school at college was doing that cartoon every day. And I got to do it for like 2 years. And so when I applied at Hallmark as an artist, they liked the fact that I could write and draw and not miss deadlines, I think. So so I moved from, at that point, California to Kansas City, and I lived in the Midwest for about 8 years and worked there. Great experience, amazing people, all these artists and writers who, want to have a creative life, but a paycheck. And this was kind of, and it was creative, and a lot of outside stuff that creative people were doing together too, which is a community kind of thing, which was wonderful. So then in all the different companies, I've worked on different kinds of things, but it's primarily writing. And for both the first two companies, Hallmark and this other company called Portal Publications, I was basically staring at a blank piece of paper and writing, sometimes to photographs, but often just coming up, and mostly humor stuff.
Okay.
And then with Papyrus, it's a little different. It's more image oriented and less humor, but some humor still. And great, amazing creative team that works there. And so mostly you get an image, and then you have the kinds of, holidays, captions, we call them, that we're writing to. And oops, sorry about that. And, I don't know how much you really want to know about greeting cards, but you have to balance the line and not say the same thing over again, which can be a challenge with, a million birthday cards. Sure. But it's a creative challenge. And it's like anything else. It's like problem solving, and then allowing your mind to go into creative mode and not overthink it, and just kind of like do your thing. I guess is the technical way of putting it.
No, it actually does fascinate me because I think of greeting cards as sort of like, people must still buy them, but it must be sort of transitioning into, I don't know if like people are buying them more for specific things, or there's just like a very true, demographic that just like loves their greeting card. Like how, so I'm fascinated with that because, for example, my parents love greeting cards, but I don't know, I've maybe bought like 5 in my life.
Right.
Right.
I think it's a generational thing, and thank you to your parents.
I love getting them too, but it just like doesn't occur to me to buy them,
Totally. And I think that's true for so many people. I mean, most people just write happy birthday on Facebook or something now.
Right.
And that's kind of how it goes. But apparently a lot of people are still buying greeting cards, and I'll be honest, it surprises me. It's a pleasant surprise because I enjoy the work, and it's I've been able to do it for a while. So there's also a kind of a little bit of a back to basics thing with maybe millennials, that there's some statistics that somebody's found that a lot of younger people are actually buying greeting cards because, believe me, this is not a slogan or a plug. I mean, it does feel good to get that, as opposed to, a note on Facebook. That also feels good too.
Yeah.
But so I think that there's something about that feels a little like craft oriented, like it feels special enough that people are still doing it, both young and old. So
yeah, is there, like, because you've been doing this for a while, so I know this is bizarre. I mean, maybe it is because it's so kind of foreign to me, but I am really intrigued by it. But like, is there a different kind of card that used to sell, I don't know, when you first started, that like you've transitioned to it? Like you were saying, humor was working really well, so people don't want funny cards anymore, or you just aren't in charge of those cards?
That's a great question. I think humor has morphed over the years for sure. honestly been doing it for over 30 years. So the humor of that age, of that stage of the world, is different than it is now, and necessarily so. And, so there's more sensitivity around certain things
Mm,
now. But no, actually, the reason that I do less now is because my company now does less humor. It's more of a design oriented and
mm,
visual oriented company. The other two companies they had a huge humor lines, and I love doing that stuff.
gotcha.
Um, so as far as the type of humor, I do think that there's, yeah, like I said, there's more sensitivity around it, as there should be.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah.
interesting. I wouldn't have thought of. I mean, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do do you find that like that you're doing a certain type of greeting card more than any other? Like, is the sympathy card the most popular, or the birthday, or
Oh, I mean, birthday cards sell more than anything else because everyone
is
has
that the thing?
birthdays. But I do have to say that a lot of sales went down during COVID, but sympathy did not. And
Ah, okay.
that was a sadness around
Right.
that, for sure. I mean, you
Right.
can see the sales results and what people are
Huh.
buying. Um, on one level, you could say, um, the words that I've written have helped people to communicate with each other. And so, and there is a bit of a trading off of hats, and I may write a sympathy card and then have to move to a humor card. Those are, you get a little bit of whiplash doing that sometimes. But I've learned to, um, maybe I need a quick little walk in between or something, to kind of like reset. But knowing not just the sympathy, but all of your cards. I mean, especially if you wrote something that you like, if it's a funny card or you hope it's funny and it sells well, then you know that maybe you know, this sounds so cliche, but you brought a smile to a number of people's faces in the world. And
Yeah,
that's a
of
pretty
course.
cool thing. And there are
Yeah.
a lot of worse things I've sort of, that I could have been doing with my time and my life, and also happy that I've been able to help support my family with that over the years. It's been super fun. It's
Hmm.
been great.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Um, are you working on something currently? Like, do you have a next sort of big project that you're brewing up, or is
Oh
that
God,
to become?
I have a feeling I'm just like you and a lot of creative people that we kind of always do, right? So yeah, I have a big piece that will be finishing up in a couple weeks, um, and it's another one of my younger son. It's the biggest portrait I've ever done. So um, I feel like I constantly need to apologize to him for doing such a big portrait, but it was a really cool photo that just sort of happened almost by accident, and it was so ethereal and so really evocative for me that I felt like, and I got permission from him to do it. And then I have some other photo references I've taken, so I have a few in mind, and some other projects. And my older son has also agreed to model for one for me. But I do want to keep going with the Youth Earth series because I feel like um, there's more to say, and it hasn't played itself out yet. There's more to do with it.
So your sons have like like they don't want to be, I mean, I'm just thinking like their people would pay a lot of money to have a portrait of themselves, right? But like kids have a very different relationship to their artistic parents than they do to art in general. Um,
That they do, yeah.
so is it something like a little annoying, or like why do you say you have to
um,
apologize?
Well, for this particular piece, because it is a very large portrait. I mean, his head is probably 4 feet tall. So
Okay.
it's, it's like, and he's a teenager. So he's not, what can I say? If I was 17 and my dad wanted to do a giant drawing of me and maybe one day show it to the public, I'd be kind of like, Dad, why don't you find somebody else to do it? But my kids are great, and they're my older son is, I think, happy now to do it because he's 20, and I think he's the last time he modeled for a piece for me he was about 5.
Hmm.
So It's totally his turn. Not that he's been asking, but I really want to do one of him too. And there's other families that I'd love to work with. And I'm trying to, honestly, in our world in Petaluma, it's there's a lot of whiteness here, and so I need to branch out. And I was able to do that with a couple of my pieces, and I really want to branch out more and more and more in that world. And I want to be very careful about appropriation and about just really respecting what any culture wants to do and wants to say, and teaming up on kinds of concepts and ideas that I want to do. But I need to be super careful about that, because I think I don't know what I don't know. And a lot of us are in that boat, and we need to be aware and ask a lot of questions and just be respectful. So I got off on a tangent on that. So yes, I have a few projects, and I'm working on new books and things like that. And that's just to say I'm writing a lot and drawing a lot, but I don't know what will be published next at this point. Just keep trying.
I totally asked you to go on that tangent, so that wasn't your fault. Oh, wonderful. Do you want to tell people how they can find out more about your work and connect with you?
Absolutely. I don't have a huge social media presence, but I have a couple of websites. petersteinart.com. Stein is spelled Stein, and that's got just my art pieces on it. And petersteinstudio.com has kind of everything. Bless you. You're quick on the mute. That
Thank
was
you.
impressive. Wow.
I could feel it coming. Sorry. So Peter Stein Studio.
petersteinstudio.com.
Okay.
And I'm on Facebook and on Instagram. I don't remember my handle, whatever it's
I'll
called.
find it for you. Don't worry about it. I'll have all these links in the podcast description, so you the listener can click on them. Yeah. Thank you so much, Peter, for joining me today, and thank y'all for listening. And we'll see you. Go ahead. Sorry.
I just want to say thank you, Porter. This is great.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks so much. Bye.